coming. It is very exciting to have Cincinnati gathered like this in this format. I think it's something that is very much needed in the Cincinnati region. I spoke about this last time we were here, different angle, sitting on that side of the room, but networking, connecting, building relationships, sharing, very important things for anybody, any human being. Human beings, by definition, have done all the amazing things that we've done because we know how to communicate and share and build off each other's successes. Cincinnati as a city is an incredible city, and there's a lot that Cincinnati has to offer, a lot of great talent Cincinnati has to offer. One of the biggest resources we have are all these Fortune 500 companies that live here and have such humongous ecosystems of talent and talent production. People that go through these machines of management skills, and Cincinnati is a very much overlooked startup destination. There's so much talent of people that can take that corporate, discipline and bring it to the startup world and bring that innovation and combine those two together to create amazing startups. Cincinnati has, I don't know if you guys saw, there's a post that was going around LinkedIn that the most likely city to have a unicorn, the most likely college to have a unicorn startup was UC. Which is a crazy stat. Over Stanford, over that, it's a crazy
Twice
stat.
as likely as Stanford.
Right. Which is nuts. Unbelievable.
And the data came out of Stanford.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a ton of talent here, and unfortunately, and this is changing, thankfully, but unfortunately, because of all these big corporations, there is a tendency to stick within those networks that you've already met at P&G for 5 years, or at GE for 5 years, or whoever else it is at Kroger for 5 years. And there's not enough of a need for some of these players to network outside of these circles, but for startups that don't start in that region, there's a huge need to meet each other and grow off of what each other has to offer. And honestly, those startups as well. I mean, there is a certain point where they say, hey, let's go to market and let's not just do everything with our four corners of our office. Let's see who else can actually help us on this project. And then they're kind of out of luck because they don't know anybody else in the Cincinnati community. And we're a great community, a community of people that really want to work and build amazing things. An ethical community. It's a great spot in the country. There's a lot of convergence of different opinions and values and beliefs in Cincinnati, which is really awesome to see. Growing up on the coast, fortunately you don't see a lot of that. He can tell you from the other side of the coast. It's really a very nice thing to do to live in the Midwest. And the Cincinnati startup scene is an incredible hotbed of talent that I personally am very motivated to try and connect between each other as much as possible. And for my own selfish needs, I know when I started in commercial real estate, I mentioned this last time, I was able to meet all the commercial real estate players pretty quickly because there's a lot of networking events. And didn't find that same access when I started a startup. And it was hard for me to meet other people in the startup ecosystem. So Ari recommended that we start a Startup Grind chapter over here. He's buddies with the founder of Startup Grind. We got a chapter started. 2-3 weeks later, we had our first event, which is awesome. Special thanks to Emmy. I don't know if she's here. She's probably back there. Emmy and Haley got this whole event off the ground. Speakers, everybody, and food, all the delicious food, everything you see. So special thanks to Emmy. Shout out for I learned a lot from the last panel that we had. We implemented weekly town halls. Anybody who's at Gearsupply can tell you how beneficial those have been for us as a team and getting everybody on board. And that's something I learned at the last Fireside chat that we had. So without further ado, I want to introduce our Fireside chat. We have Drew McKenzie, VP of Product at Subterra. I'll tell you a little bit about it in a second. As well as Ari Roisman, who's a new exciting startup that he'll tell you about in a second, called Formative. 2 times founder, 2 well-established startups. You read about them online from the West Coast, but it's coming here to Cincinnati for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned. And without further ado, give it up to our speakers. We'll start with Ari and then pass on to Drew.
Thank you everybody for coming out. This is awesome. And we're just getting started. Thank you, Mando, for hosting. It's awesome to be here. Real quick on me, in case you weren't at the inaugural Startup Grind Cincinnati event. I recently moved here after long stints in Israel and then in Palo Alto, which are I'd say the two biggest global startup ecosystems. And then made my way back to my old college town in St. Louis and rode out the pandemic there, and then just moved in over the summer, and it's been a blast, and I feel like it just continues to become more and more fun to get to know the local ecosystem. I'm candidly really impressed by how much is happening and how eager people are to grow. I think that this ecosystem, after literally traveling all over the globe and being deeply immersed in all of the tier 1 ecosystems, I think there's something special here, and I think that each and every one of us, just for coming out and showing up at these events, and then trying to pay it forward and help each other out and just build together, we are building something special here. So again, round of applause for everyone. This community that we're part of now with the Startup Grind chapter is special. There's 5 million people and 600 chapters across the globe. There's a really wonderful guy named Derek that started this as a kind of as a side project, and then it became this huge community. It's not like a business. It's really a community. He has a business as well that kind of blossomed out of this. But even living in the heart of Silicon Valley, I was always so impressed with the annual Global Startup Grind event. It was like he brought out the who's who of Silicon Valley, and then there was just a very familial, warm atmosphere. And he just, with this ethos that we're here to support each other and help each other and try to give first. So it's awesome to be here and to be a part of this. Okay, so we've got Drew McKenzie here with us this evening. We're gonna just chat, and then you'll chime in and ask questions, and then we'll chat a little bit more, and then maybe we'll have a couple more questions, and then we're gonna hang out a little bit afterwards. We'll try to keep this to like 40, 45 minutes. We'll try to keep it punchy. And then afterwards, we're gonna do like a little fun networking thing and see how much we can actually help each other. All right, so Drew is one of I think, the OG product guys that's been grinding it out behind the scenes, actually making big visions come to life here for many years. First with
Hology on the startup side.
Okay.
And then was at Everything But the House, EBTH, auction marketplace.
So he was actually the guy that led the product team and built the product. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fun ride. And then now, I guess, getting close to 2 years here working on Subterra.
And also an entrepreneur in residence and a mentor at Cincinnati.
At the University of Cincinnati's Venture Lab, yeah.
Okay.
All
right, so let's just dive in. You're a product guy, right? So first of all, I think we should just define what is a product guy? What is the product role within an organization? And then you're not the founder of your company, but you're the VP product. So how does that work?
Yeah, well, so I think the role of product probably has a very wide definition for most people, but the way that I think about product is we're on a mission, and most of those missions in my case involve software or maybe even some hardware. And for me, it's about really understanding what's going to move us towards completing that mission. And you can almost think about it as kind of like the hands or the technical orchestrator of what's going to happen and when for that founder. So Subterra, we're a very small team, right? So I joined Rob, I was employee number 2. And so, he has this vision, and so I'm sitting here putting those plans in motion and timelines into place. But it always has to come back to what is moving and going to propel our mission forward. And I think founders are incredibly brilliant at what they do, right? They usually can really crystallize around an idea, they understand the problem, but maybe they're not technical in the sense of building software, how to build it, or how to scale software. And that's where I think people that gravitate towards product and like that way of thinking can help those early founders and those teams really understand, okay, how are we going to crystallize this into something we can actually build and get in front of users as quick as possible. But also, sometimes that also means that you also put on some blinders on purpose so that you can actually get to the things that are going to be the most, you said, let's keep this punchy. That's what it is, right? You got to have those things that are going to grab that user, whatever it might be. If it's e-commerce, maybe it's some, wild thing that keeps them coming back and interacting with some experience on a page that talks about a product. Or, for engineers, civil engineers, it might be about how we can rapidly get them a 3D reconstruction in front of them so that they can do their work. It really just comes down to whatever the use case is. But I think at the end of the day, it's really about helping the organization define and then ultimately prioritize when they're going to build those things that will complete the mission.
What is a product-centric company? And then can a company succeed if it's not product-centric? And then how do you know if you're building the right product for the right market at the right time?
Sure.
And then how do you keep tabs of all that to actually know that you're on the right path?
Sure. Well, I think there's a lot of people that try to figure all that out. I would say that I would just say that I do my best every day to try to make those things happen in some kind of meaningful, positive way. But a product-centric organization is going to look at, this is actually how we derive the value for our clients, right? It comes out of whatever this interface is, whatever they're interacting with. And if we're really being product-centric, it doesn't start with just sitting down with a team of, in my case, software developers in a room and we start slinging code. In fact, I don't ever want us to even touch the keyboards. Like, you want to get everybody to back away from all that and really understand, okay, we have an opportunity here to build a feature. And that feature has to make us money on the day it launches. Now, it might fail, radically fail, but at least on the whiteboard, right, with the team and planning, you're saying, okay, if we build this thing, it's now going to help us, it's going to help us get to our mission here, complete our mission, but it's actually going to create value so that we can go sell this thing to a user, a client, customer, however, whatever your parlance is. And so if you're truly thinking like a product-centric organization, you're going to make the decisions, frankly, as a team. Now, you might have somebody who's going to lead those discussions and build consensus around it, but at the end of the day, if you're really being centric about it, you're going to choose, yes, we're going to all build this because we believe that it's going to actually move us forward. I think to your comment about, well, what happens if an organization isn't product-centric? They're going to probably build features and things that are absolutely meaningless. Now, don't get me wrong, you got to have some key features in any kind of software, right? It's kind of like table stakes. But outside of that, the reality of it is you can burn a whole lot of money and time. And I would say that both of those are very important to any startup. And if you build the wrong thing, you're not going to be successful, right? And you're probably also not going to be real happy doing it, right? Like, who wants to work really hard or grind it out for a 2-week sprint to launch something that then they put in front of their customers or their users or maybe their friends and family, and it doesn't relate, it doesn't connect, it doesn't get them to do the thing you thought they were going to do, and that's really hard to overcome. And so you try to de-risk all that, and I think if you're really thinking about being a product-centric mindset, you're going to de-risk as much as possible before you ever actually start building, like even before you get to wireframes, all those things that make software happen, like take a big step back from all that.
Okay, so let's say we do all that,
Yep.
and we're focused on the product.
Yep.
How do I know that I'm building something that people actually want? Steve Jobs was famous for building things that people wanted, but maybe didn't even know that they wanted,
Sure.
and apparently didn't do much user research or market research. So how do you think about that? Like, do you try to be bold and like, we know better than the end user, and like, we're kind of, moving them from horses to internal combustion engines, or do you have this ongoing feedback loop with users?
Yeah. So I think it's about the
Or
type.
customers.
Yeah, customers. I think ultimately it's going to start with what you're actually building, right? So I'm saying software is kind of like this nebulous term, right? But you can be in spaces where you can do a lot of, whether it's on the fly user research or really in-depth kinds of studies and things like that. And that's all great. You should do as much homework with users as you possibly can. I would say that's important. Even if Steve Jobs didn't do a lot of it, the reality is I think you actually spend a lot of time talking to a lot of smart people. But I think that if you, at its core, if you are working on something where you already have a user base, right, and you can interact with those people and glean the data that's coming off of those interactions, whatever the buttons are that they're pushing and all those things. If you are in a space like e-commerce or something like that, where you can do those things, you should do that. If you're in a space where maybe you're just now starting to work with customer number one, right? Maybe they're coming along for the ride, right? And they're saying, yep, we're gonna make this leap of faith with you. Well, you know what? You don't know anything else, so you probably have some assumptions and hypotheses, but I think what you should do is spend a lot of time with that customer and really understand what's going on. So, like in the case of Subterra, to be perfectly frank, our first customer, ultimately for this product that we're building.
And I think we skipped that.
Yeah.
We
did, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the product that you're actually building is.
Yeah, so, and I think this is actually a good way to kind of answer your question. So, Subterra has this vision and mission to digitize the underground infrastructure that's underneath our roads, highways, and really wild places. And if you think that the roads are really bad that you drove in on in the parking lot, let me just tell you, underneath, it's probably in similar shape. But our first customer for this platform that we're building to help engineers is all predicated around sewer districts. So I know that's probably not real sexy, right? But just think you want the water to come into your home and you also want it to leave. You just want to say that it always wants to keep the water flowing. And so the Metropolitan Sewer District of Greater Cincinnati, they're actually one of the most progressive wastewater utilities in America. It's actually really incredible inside the industry. And they saw what we were building, and we helped them accomplish some things that they never thought were possible, to be quite honest. And so they did take a gamble. Like, they were very early on and said, hey, we want to build this with you. And so we're out in the field, literally, still now, we're now 3 years into that relationship. We're still out in the field with them every month, with the field technicians that are actually using our hardware, and then ultimately our software on the back end. And so we've essentially aligned ourselves to say, that's how we're going to do our research. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do surveys and all this other stuff, but in our backyard, literally 5 miles from my house, I can go every day of the week if I want to, and I can go get in a truck, and I can go out with these people and not only observe, but ask questions, understand what's going on. And to me, getting close to your user, you should do that in any way, shape, or form that's possible for your business. And sometimes that's easier said than done, right? Like, if my customer happens to be across the pond, well, guess what? You're going to do it with virtual tools and all that. I've got the fortunate ability to be able to just drive down the road and bring a sandwich for lunch, and we can all sit down and review stuff together, or we go out in the field and do work. And by the way, get your steel-toed boots on, and let's go pop some manholes. So again, I think it just really comes back to you have to find ways that are pertinent to you and to move your business forward to get as close as humanly possible to your user. And by the way, do it as much as possible. Look, we all have time constraints, but the reality is you've got to carve out time. And whether that's your product person on the team, or it's still the founder, you're still a founder in one building this thing, you cannot do enough interviews. We can talk about lean startup and all those things. What they say, 100 interviews minimum, right, to get the plan going. I would say, yeah, and you know what, you're going to keep doing 100 interviews every quarter, even after you're already in market, right? That's what's going to come down to.
Beautiful. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, you might have said it and I might have missed it, but I'm gonna be stuck on this in my head and
Okay,
try to find
let's
out
do
what
it.
is what's your customer buying? What's their value proposition?
Yeah, so our customer is buying a solution that is allowing them to rapidly screen large pipes that actually have water running in them. So, to believe it or not, we still have places in the world where people are walking through sewage to examine the condition of pipes. We don't think that that's a very good model. Our founder actually used to do it. If you go to our website, you can actually see pictures of him walking like waist. Yeah.
Is that the origin story? Like that was his job, and he was like, "This is horrible. People shouldn't be doing this."
Yeah. So he was using the same type of technique with coal mines. That business kind of dried up for a lot of reasons, and he's like, "Where else can I apply this technology?" He got introduced to Sydney Water in Australia. They said, "Hey, we walk the sewers and have to do this periodically." And he's like, "Oh, well, I've got all these cameras and we can do that." And so he started initially by, strapping them to himself and walking through. And then he's like, "Why do I need to wear these?" And then he created a floating device that he pushed. And then he goes, "Why do I need to be down here pushing this thing? I need to get out of here. This is not helping." And I looked at him and I go, "Yeah, I would agree with you." And I didn't want to, he's like, "Were you going to come down there with me?" And I go, "No." So anyway, over time, right, he realized, okay, there's got to be a better way. Well, so in the industry today, we've been investigating pipes underground for 50, 60, 70 years, right? In all shapes or forms, right? We got robots, we got drones flying through them, all this things. Great. You need all types of toolkit. The thing about our tools is that they are untethered and they go with the flow. So we drop in at a manhole upstream, right? All these things are gravity fed, and we pick it up downstream. So we're traversing miles of pipe. So you come back to the value proposition. I felt like I had to kind of center this a little bit. Coming back to the value proposition, our solution can capture and screen about 10,000 linear feet of pipe in a couple of hours. Okay. The historical way that the utility would go about capturing that much data would take them every bit of a month minimum, and that's if they're really progressive and can make it all happen, right? Like safety, traffic control, permits, you name it. That's just on the planning side, let alone the execution. It might actually take them more like 6 or 8 weeks to do that. So that's the big value proposition. Also, this technology has allowed us to let utilities see things. They get eyes on things that they've never been able to see before. So a real quick example, Mill Creek here in Cincinnati. It's been there for a really long time. Guess what? There's a sewer underneath the creek, literally in the creek. And so you have to get on a little canoe or a kayak or whatever and go out to these big, tall manholes that sit out in the middle of the creek. Well, it was built about 100 years ago. Do you think anybody's around that built it? No. Do we have some drawings? Maybe. But they never seen it. They literally, anybody living and working at the utility, nobody knew what this thing was like. Our technology, and they tried doing RFPs to a bunch of different places to do it, but it was Rob and his technology, his vision around how we do this on an untethered way that allowed them to see something that we never had been inspected before. So pretty cool, right? And we're getting people out of the sewer, we're keeping them safer, right? Maybe smell a little bit better when we go home before we have to shower. And so there's a lot of benefits, but that's the real main one here. You can imagine that, I think we see that there's job shortages everywhere in the wastewater and utility space. Compound that by 10x of what you're seeing. People come out of school getting civil engineering degrees, they're not racing towards our public utilities. And you know what, they should, because their bright minds, we need them all there, because guess what? Gotta keep the water moving. Right? So that's kind of where our value prop really lies with Subterra and the work that we're doing with utilities.
Good. Jared, thank you for jumping in. And I think let's flow with that. Anybody else have any questions they want to jump in with?
Yeah, so my name is Steven, I'm from Oxano. My one question is, when you work on a product, obviously you get to that MVP, you refine it, your client likes it. At what point do you start thinking about product 2.0? and how much of your resources day to day do you devote to that?
Great
If you
question.
can talk about
Yeah, that's fair. I'm sorry, was it Stefan? Is that right?
Stefan.
Stefan, nice to meet you.
And Seven, what do you do?
Oh, I'm a co-founder in a medical device company. We develop advanced wound dressings for treatment of diabetic foot ulcers, pressure ulcers, chronic non-healing wounds, and we launched a business back in 2022 on the veterinary side, and that's been.
Stefan is one of 6 PhD chemists that have somehow put together several $1 million just amongst angels and is building a transformative healing technology in Cincinnati.
That's awesome.
I didn't have grades when I started.
All right, so to go to your question, like MVP. So what I would suggest is that your MVP, you should try to like milk that for as long as possible, right? And the ways that you might see that you can no longer milk it might be that, I don't know, you have so many users or activities going on within the MVP, within the version that it's failing, right? Like it's literally done, if it's software, for example. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you would jump to like a 2.0. So if the MVP is really kind of like 1.0, I would tell you you need to find your quickest path to like a 1.125. I mean, really, that's how I've always thought about feature development on a platform, whether you have to kind of start over because of architectural reasons or something like that. But the reality is like to go from like wholesale types of changes in a 1 to a 2, that's really challenging to pull off. I'm not saying you can't do it, and if somebody has to do that, like good luck. I'll be here to cheerlead for you, but I would really have you think about it being much more incremental. And again, stay in that MVP as long as you possibly can. I've actually seen firsthand where you don't stay in there long enough and you say, oh, I got to rebuild this platform because it doesn't scale. It's like, well, what do you mean it didn't scale? Like, did it just stop working? Like, did it stop printing you money that you were making from it? They're like, well, no, it took more servers. There's all these excuses, right? And that's where I think you got to really dig down in and say, well, what does that mean? Like, why do we have to rebuild it? On the hardware side, because it sounds like you're in that space, again, you're working on a very hard problem. Hardware is really hard. Like, if you think that software is tough, oh man, and I signed up for both. It's awesome. But what I'd say about hardware, like our flagship device is probably on literally 13.0 since inception. And I'm telling you, there were a lot of 1.125s and a lot of 1.225s, right? And so it's got to be the same type of mindset. Yeah, but great question.
Another one?
Where do you go?
Oh, go ahead.
Hello, Josh Tomato. I'm a senior front-end lead at Cloverleaf.me.
What's Cloverleaf do?
We are providing an automated life coaching platform. We leverage known behavioral and personality assessments like Enneagram, DISC, instinctive drives. We'll build a data profile on you and give you life coaching insights about yourself.
Headquartered here?
Headquartered here in Cincinnati.
Venture backed?
Yes.
How much have you guys raised?
Good question. It's in the millions, but not double digits.
14?
No, it's single digits. 6, 7, 8 billion, somewhere in there.
I think you guys raised a little more than that.
Maybe.
That's all good.
I just, like I told someone else.
He's busy building the product.
I'm in the product. So I just stick the product, like I told someone else, I just cash the checks, I don't write them, so.
There you go.
So,
What's your question, Josh?
so not on here is that this is Subterra.ai, right? So in that product evolution that you explained, you didn't get to that AI piece, I'm kind of interested how that has come along and where you started leveraging that new product.
Great.
Or is that just a marketing plug?
You're on the right track. So our company official name on the masthead is actually Subterra AI. Our website is subterra.ai. We do leverage AI in our solution, but we're very human-centered. So the work that our industry needs to have performed has to have a certified inspector review everything. So we kind of think about this as human-in-the-loop types of activities with AI. We're using a lot of computer vision to look at object detection, right? We're looking at cracks and holes, voids, all this kind of things. And so that is very much there. But what we found very early on is, one, there was this crazy race on AI in all sectors, right? And we found that when we led with AI, it's going to help you do these things. The people in the room, maybe a little older than even me, they've been in this role for maybe 40 years, and they go, "What are you talking about? I don't care. Like, you're scaring me. You're scaring my staff. Like, we don't understand." And again, that's all, like, I'm not being flip about it. Like, that was actually what they told us, like, and we saw it in their face, right? And so we recognized pretty early on that while we can do a lot of things in the software, they actually don't necessarily need to know how that's done or made and all those things. They just want the outputs, right? So when we come back to like value proposition, you know what they need at the end of the day? They need to be able to watch that video. They need a PDF report. Did you know those things are still really popular? PDF report. And they might need a database transfer to put it on a server of their own, right? So we really focus on the outputs, but there is AI in there. Yeah, we've chose from a marketing perspective, but also we are very human first, and we want to have very positive conversations with people. We don't want to put them, kind of a defensive stance right away.
Cincinnati 10 years behind.
Well, yeah, but we've also deployed in the UK and Australia. I mean, so it's not just here. It's. I think everybody sees the headlines and they're reading the news and they're thinking about, well, what's going on, and hey, all this will shake out in the end. We'll all be better for it, but it's a little bit challenging at times. So.
What do you think is the best way to find co-founders?
Best way to find co-founders. Well, I think events like this are actually really good. I can count a lot of people that I know in my network that have met. I will tell you, Slack community channels are also fantastic. That's how I got connected with Rob. I didn't know Rob. I didn't know Subterra, but he put out on Slack one day in the Cincy Tech Slack channel. He's like, "Hey, I want to talk to somebody about product. I keep having my advisors tell me it's probably time that we get thinking about like product." He's like, "Can somebody help explain that to me?" And I said, "Hey, let's grab a coffee." And that turned into some more coffee and maybe some beers over lunch, and then maybe a dinner or two, and that's just how it goes. And so I think these types of events are great. I'd also tell you, like, if you're still involved in interacting with like university, like where maybe you went to school or involved with in some shape or form or any kind of organization like that, they're a great place to meet people.
I'll share a quick
Anything to
perspective
add,
on
Ari?
that. Yeah, and then I'm gonna tap you with a few more.
Sure.
There's communities, or there's events, or there's like fellowships that you can join, like at a very, very early stage. I think they're more popular on the West Coast. I actually, right after I passed off CEO responsibilities for the company I founded and ran for over a decade, I got turned on to this thing called On Deck, which is out in the Bay Area. On Deck is pretty cool. It's like 4 or 5 years old, but they already have 2,500 founders that have come through the program that have created $9 billion in value. And they bring about 100 people together and they try to stack the room where it's about half technical and half non-technical folks, and everyone's in the early stages of thinking about what they want to do. Most people aren't even like fully committed to doing exactly that, so there's a lot of founder serendipity that happens there. That said, when I went out to the program, I was in the middle, at the end of a session about how to find a co-founder. And ironically, the big point on the slide was that, it's kind of like getting married and you really want to date and really like know this person for a while before you tie the knot. So as much as like you all just paid some money and you're all out here for the week and maybe you'll meet your co-founder, like it's probably best you actually start a company with somebody that you really know well. And then literally, as he was finishing that, I got a phone call from an old friend from college, and then was all excited telling about this new thing I wanted to start, and then that ended up being my co-founder for my new thing, Formative. So I think there's something energetically almost, if that doesn't sound too heebie-jeebie, that happens when you kind of put yourself out there and you actually start putting one foot after another. Even if you're moving in the wrong direction, you're putting effort and you're trying, and then if you keep doing that long enough, things just kind of happen. That's what I've found.
Yeah, I dated Rob for like 3 or 4 months, I think. And I actually think I even use that. I was like, you do realize if we do this, like, I understand I'm not your co-founder, but I mean, I'm gonna be your only wingman pretty much on this thing, so we're basically getting married. You know? So,
Yeah.
it's true. We spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about this mythical place called product market fit. So let's first define that, and then try to characterize how we know when we've gotten there
Sure. So
and why it's important.
So product market fit is really about knowing that the business model that you have planned out probably for months and worked on maybe even years in your mind, and what you're building and actually selling to the market can actually be repeatable. So product market fit doesn't count when you do it once. It doesn't count if you sold it twice. Frankly, you got to be able to show that you can do it over and over again.
Right, because it's not product user fit, it's
No.
product market fit.
Yes. So once you've went through all your exercises to bring down, what's my service addressable, we can go down the phone, right, and say, oh, it's 1 billion people, you want to have some big number, right? That's kind of the story.
A Coke for every kid in China.
That's right. So when you're thinking about that market, it has to be that you're able to sell. So I don't care if it's a credit card dip product, right, where you're paying $9.99 a month online for some subscription, or if it's a $100,000 contract that's got a 3-year horizon on it. Doesn't matter what it is. It has to be repeatable. And let me give you an example of how quickly product market fit when you think you've nailed it, and then all of a sudden it just goes sideways. So everything but the house, UBTH here locally, we were the rocket, right?
How much did you guys raise?
What was the number? 80, I think it was 80 million at the end.
In
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati.
Like, how many years ago?
This was 7 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I think there's going to be some other marketplaces that are going to be a unicorn here in the future, but we were definitely like working towards unicorn status. So we had built out 5 markets. We had been in Cincinnati for 9 years before it took venture funding. So 1 market, 9 years, everybody knew about us. Cincinnati loved us, right? Well, that's cool. That's 1. Does that mean fit? Well, maybe for Cincinnati, right? In our audience of a couple million folks. But we used the first money to go to 5 markets outside of Cincinnati. So I guess technically we'd be in 6. Numbers are holding. Go-to-market strategy is working, right? We parachute in, we build out the thing, sales start moving. Fantastic.
Markets like Cincinnati?
Yep, absolutely. We immediately went adjacent, right? So Columbus, Indy, Louisville, Lexington, the Midwest, right? St. Louis, the picture goes on and on. So everything's looking good. Numbers are holding. We're about 2 years deep, I guess, maybe a year and a half deep into those other 5 markets. Great. We hit the button for 10. Like, do another 5. Boom. Okay. Yeah, numbers, okay. Like, maybe some of those more far-flung, not looking so much like Cincinnati, but they're still holding enough within tolerance, like everybody's okay. Here's where the rub hit. When we hit the button to go to 15, we probably really started like taking our eye off the ball of some of those original 5. Because, we said, oh, we're moving on, right? You only got so much time in the day. Like, yeah, they're holding, revenue's coming in. Great. We hit the button to go to another 5. So now we're at 20. Actually, I think when I was let go, I think we were in 23 markets. But I will tell you, when we went from north of 15 is when the underpinning really started to shift. And guess what it was all centered around?
Not having enough support to backfill it?
Shipping.
Yeah, that's that shit.
We were pursuing a strategy where our board was also very much a part of this, and this is public record, and it's all in public record now. The board, we were all pursuing a strategy that says, we are going to create Amazon-like capacity, and that we want to be able to ship goods anywhere in America, right? So if you want that Rolex and it's coming out of Charleston, South Carolina, guess what? We're going to ship it to you, and you're going to get Amazon-like service, and it's going to be in LA to you in 2 days, right? Like that was kind of our thinking, and that's what we were building all the technology around to support that. Well, the first thing about auctions, estate auctions, is that people actually like to go pick up the stuff, right? That's like the old model. We were disrupting that model. Well, in those early days, those first 10 markets, we were still allowing people to go to that home where those goods were and pick it up. They got that big value kind of play in their belly, right? And they felt good, like I'm getting a deal, right? And I get to go pick it up. We had people drive hours to go pick stuff. They just loved it. It was part of the thing. But on those newer markets, we started doing that less and less and less. And what happened was everybody caught wind, and they just didn't like the idea that we were going to ship these items. And it caused so much churn with our users. Like they dropped out. And now it doesn't say we couldn't recover from it, right? We obviously did. The company's still around. It's a different scale than what it was, but revenue is actually really good. Like they've been able to recover a lot. But they lost, I'm not gonna say they lost it, but it definitely went sideways for a bit. And it was all around the idea that we thought we knew better. Even though, guess what? We would push data around shipping, like dashboards and all those things. We would show leadership. People do not like this. They do not want to ship all these things. They want to come pick it up. We would tell them this on the weekly, like it's right here. And again, growing fast, everything's great, blinders, and that's when you get hit. So.
What were the reasons they stated for why it was like a good idea to go against the data that you were advising?
Yeah, so, I mean, look, there were definitely markets where shipping made a whole lot of sense, but we were basically applying that to like every item we sell. Well, okay, we were selling everything from Rolexes to couches. No offense, you know how much it costs to ship a couch?
Right.
You know how much it costs to have a human go into a home and move that couch 4 or 5 times to get it prepped to go on auction and then sell it? So my point is like, I'm not here to say like, look, it was a fine strategy to pursue. We probably maybe should have executed it a little bit better. Maybe talked with our users a little bit more about why and how and when. But the reality was, we were growing too fast at the end of the day. And so when we talk about when you lose fit, it's when you're putting the accelerator on so fast. And by the way, VC is great for that, right? That's what they want. At least they did. And now I think we're coming into a cycle where that's going to be a little bit more flipped, right? It's going to be more about stability and being able to say, yeah, we still want really great growth, but we're not going to do it at the cost of everything.
Okay, good. So let's get into that.
Yeah.
So, in an earlier conversation, you were sharing some of your lack of appreciation for VC funding, especially early on, especially for certain types of companies. So, can you speak to that a little bit and then maybe unpack this market dynamic and then how that impacts us here in Cincinnati?
Sure. Yeah, look, I'll preface by saying that if you want to go down the venture path and you're committed to it, go for it. But now having done this 3 times and seeing really interesting ways that it plays out, I think for most, venture should probably be the last stop if you're really thinking about building a business that's sustainable. Venture is great in lots of ways, but if we unpack it, it forces you to make decisions sometimes that are probably not, they might be really good short-term gain, but just like I talked about in the EVTH example, that actually ended up to work, it was so against us. But again, that's because of who's driving the bus, right? The minute you take that money, they got a seat at the table, and you're going to give up a lot of your company. And I think what I've come to really appreciate about the Midwest and startups is that I think we're all pretty practical. Like, we've got that kind of innate kind of thing. We're probably a little bit more risk adverse than maybe we would be if we grew up on the coast. I don't know, that's probably a big generality, but I think it's really true. So I think we should embrace that, right? And I think if you're able to build a business that you can truly get product market fit, where something is repeatable, yes, you will grow slower than taking venture, but if you can commit to reinvesting your revenue and bootstrapping, for as long as you can, you will, I think the numbers play this out pretty effectively, is that you're going to be better off, typically, like on the whole, right? There's a lot of people that I've seen work really hard to make their startup investable by VCs. And I actually think they probably missed an opportunity to create a really great business for themselves and not give up over half of it, or maybe 60 or 70% at the end of the day. Again, that's their choice, but that would be what I would really challenge you to think about. If you need to go down the venture path, you better have product market fit, and you better be building some moats of defensibility, because the minute you take that and it goes across the wire, all those people that are thinking about ideas at those forums and looking for a founder, they might say, oh, investors are investing in that, cool, I'm going to go do that too. And so all of a sudden now you got even more competition. Whereas if maybe you were a little bit more under the radar, building a little bit slower, you might get more runway.
Just to underscore that point, most of the really successful people that I've interacted with, and it's not maybe the headlines, are folks that bootstrapped, worked within their means, really focused on the bottom line, built bottom up, were really careful about taking outside capital, didn't look at raising money as something strategic. It was always a tactic that played into a bigger strategy and was like well thought through leverage. And then a lot of folks that go out and raise big money, that really ends up complicating things, and then that becomes the focus, and you kind of have to like live into this valuation, and then you end up trying to do like unnatural things. VCs are in the business of investing in dozens of companies where one is going to return the entire fund. So it's that one company that's going to do 100x. And candidly, having been there and done that, being the founder that's in the driver's seat, that's expected, that's your job, is to be that ridiculous, world-class, elite outlier that returns 100x on a huge amount of money, is a really extreme place to be, and probably isn't healthy for just about everybody. So it's just something to think about if that's kind of something you aspire to, and if you're on that path, or you think you have something that's worthy of big VC dollars, and you really think so, and you want to kind of get like a quick gut check, like I'm happy to chat with you and we can see. Because if you are, that's amazing, and then we got to get you lots of capital and build unicorns in Cincinnati.
And get a gym membership too. Seriously, you're going to need, or whatever.
You need a lot of support. That's the other thing, is that most early stage, especially early stage or first time founders that are on that path, are incredibly talented and highly driven, or kind of off the charts in some ways, but then oftentimes really don't take care of themselves and get themselves like the right supportive infrastructure, and then the right litmus test to make sure that they're like actually in the right accountability structure. It's a lot. It's like very much akin to like training for the Olympics. That said, there's many paths in all industries that are tried and true to really build something that's enduring, bottom up, not taking outside capital. Maybe you structure it as a loan or as debt, or you figure out how to get grants. There's lots of grants available, especially there's lots of stuff going on here in Ohio. And the irony is, the easiest way to raise money from venture is not needing their money. And then the old adage is that if we go in there and we're asking for money, maybe we'll get some advice. But if we go in asking for advice, maybe we'll get some money.
Hi, Dino. I'm from Rootstrap. We're bootstrapped.
Good.
Custom software development company who works specifically with startups. My question is pertaining to product strategy versus technology strategy. With the VP of product, but sounds like the de facto CTO as well.
Yep, early
days. Is there
days.
an inflection point at which the disciplines or focus should split? At which point is that Does it depend?
Yeah, well, one, if you're gonna build software, you really, and if you are not an engineer, software developer engineer, you need to find a technical co-founder. Like, as we said, you're getting married, right? That wasn't the case with Subterra, right? We found a technical lead who built the product, or at least a large portion of the current product, and then decided to pursue another opportunity. Happens all the time. What I would tell you though is that once that happened, we realized that we said, well, we're already this far down the track. Come back to product market fit, and how many times are we repeating that every single day, every single week of selling? We looked at it and said, well, we just can't afford it. It's not that we don't want that person with us, sitting here in the trenches with us. We just don't have the luxury right now. But coming back to your question about like when, it should be on day one, to be quite frank. If you're gonna have any real level, I think, of success, and that person needs to be really committed, just like a founder, and they should be on that cap table. Like, if you're gonna build a software company, you can't do it without that. And I would say when, if you can't do it on day one because you haven't found that person to partner up with that can be that technical person, you need to do it as soon as you can afford to do it. And you know, with Rob, to his credit, I wish he was actually here. He should probably be up here telling this story, but you know, he bootstrapped, you know, that technical lead to build this product for several years by selling. So again, if you've got product market fit and you can sell and create revenue, and you know, he probably wasn't paying himself, but he was turning around and paying the folks that he knew could keep moving him forward and getting him ultimately to complete that mission, you know, complete the mission run. So.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more, and then we'll do one or maybe two more, and then we're gonna wrap up and move into the next part of the. So you had this meeting with the founder. You'd already been at it a little while. Wanted to explore product. You dated for a while. You joined forces.
Yep.
I want to try to unpack that dynamic because I think a lot of us as founders, we have something that we have a vision, right? There's something that we want to build. Maybe we build an early iteration of the product. Maybe we don't even have the capability of doing that on our own. How does that work? Where I see something, maybe I have a unique vantage point, or I know the right people to be able to advance that. I'm just super passionate about it. And I just have this like burning intuition, and like I'm able to convince people around me. And, but like, how as a founder do I know if I should be building this on my own and like hiring just some engineers or like lower level people versus like bringing in like a serious product professional to build at an early stage?
Yeah, I think it probably starts with what the founder knows what their strengths are, right? There are founders that are very technical, right? And they can get themselves far down the track. I mean, we got lots of tooling today, right, that would allow founders, I think, to go further than they ever went. Now, not to say that that's scalable potentially, but for me, my experience tells me that when a founder needs to make that decision, it's really because they've realized that them not making the decision to bring somebody else in to help them deliver their vision is actually holding them back. And you know, Rob and I talked about this for a long time before I agreed to come on, and that was the heart of our discussions. Is like, well, when's the timing right? You know, because one, it could be a revenue thing, right? Like, hey, we all need to figure out how we're feeding ourselves while we build this great thing together. But it also might be that, hey, you're at an impasse because you're maybe having challenges talking with those people anymore, or you're not getting the output that you think you need. I mean, everybody wants everything done, yesterday, right? I spend a ton of time with any of these founders I work with, or even the CTOs. Like, everybody's got pressure to do it now. Well, things take time, and good things do take time. And if we're thinking about really incremental feature building to de-risk everything, that inherently there's a time horizon on that. And so, it's easy to think about like, well, it's just software, right? It's just some lines of code, we can do that. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, it is. But at the same time, maybe you didn't need to write that code, right? Or you didn't need that feature. And so I think for Rob, if he were here, he would tell you, like, he got to a spot where he realized, like, for him to keep growing the business and moving forward, he needed a partner. And that's what I would tell a founder, like, if you can't mentally get to that point as a founder and recognize that you're gonna kind of give up some of your baby, like, we have hard, we talked about this, I think, in a previous chat, like, founders and maybe that product owner or product role, like, it's not going to always be rosy. Like, I got to deliver some hard truths sometimes about, like, prioritization. Like, yes, you've got this vision and you articulated it well, but the steps on how we would build that are very different than what you mentally might have in your mind. And so it's my job. One, I do have to convince you of that, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's your company or his company. And so if I can't do that, then clearly I haven't thought about it hard enough. So, but I think it comes down to the founder has to be mentally in that state of saying, it's time. And nobody should come in and talk to the founder and say, like, tell him or her that it's time. Like, it has to come from them. I'm serious. Like, our advisors, they tell us all the time, you need to hire this person. And it's like, well, okay, but if I do that, here's what the burn, there's all these decisions to make, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with the founder.
Yeah, I once, one of my early investors once threw up a tweet that resonated with me, which was like, the most important part of the founder's job is like parsing all of the advice that he or she is getting, which is like all inherently contradictory, and then figuring out like who to actually listen to, or more importantly, like, it's really not about who to listen to. Like, everything as a founder that we're getting all these inputs, it's really on us to parse all that and to make our own decision. We have to be making our own decision, which is sometimes really difficult, especially if we have stakeholders that are telling us what to do, which they shouldn't be doing. But they oftentimes do, not knowing any better, not being worked out enough that they can even control themselves. And then we have to make that decision and then handle all that delicately. All right, so I think we'll take one more question, and then we'll have like maybe a parting word of wisdom, and then we'll move into hanging out. Any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so Anthony with Alloy Growth Lab.
Tell us in a sentence about Alloy Growth Lab, which is phenomenal, and if you haven't gone and checked out what they've got going on, it's really impressive.
Yeah, so we're a tech incubator up in Norwood, right next to Xavier University. We've got about 80,000 square feet of space for startups. And it's a great community to meet other founders, connect with other founders, educate other founders.
And Anthony and Jeremy are awesome, and just boots on the ground, driving the whole
It's
community.
true, it's very true.
Thank you. And Steven.
I'll second that.
Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so.
Lots of brilliant mad scientists building
It is, it's crazy.
cool stuff.
But my question is, and you and I were kind of talking about this earlier, but you're in a notoriously slow, bureaucratic market for making decisions. Sales cycles are just glacial. I mean, how do you guys deal with that?
It's
getting through that, keeping the cash coming in.
Yeah, well, one, we take that Midwest thing to heart. Like, we look at every dollar like, hey, do we need to invest that dollar right now into this thing, right? So a lot of cost containment. Like, we would love to be at Alloy in the office, but we don't. We're being tight on our dollars. As much as we know we can benefit from being there, places like it.
Maybe we can work out a deal.
Yeah, maybe. Anthony's been a big part of our success, so we're for sure with that. But as far as kind of keeping, I'll talk about morale first, because by the way, every startup's going to do this, no matter if it's a long sales cycle or not. You're going to have these ups and flows of revenue, cash, and you're looking at the bank account every month going, okay. It's just going to happen. I would say it's about keeping morale up. So we hired some salespeople probably 6 months ago, and they've been great. Lots of activity, but you can imagine they get really beat down, right? They're the ones getting their rejection. I mean, look, Rob and I both are also still doing sales.
I don't know how these guys do it.
Oh, it's, I tell you, flak jacket's amazing, right? But we also got to do things to really keep them pumped up. And so that's, I would say right now when things are really slow, like, look, November, December, January, always pretty notorious, right? Unless there's some extra budget here and there. The reality is nothing's happened until the sun comes out in March, right? And people actually want to be outside, because guess what? We got to go outside to do our work, for the most part. So they're out there every day in the snow right now and crazy weather, but they're not really, in tune to purchasing right now. So it's about keeping them positive, and we're also like very much in content mode. So when things, like we know we got this pipeline of activity that we think is going to thaw out here in the spring. So
No
right
pun
now,
intended.
what's that?
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. We're building lots of content. So we got some announcements that will come out in the next few weeks where we're basically just trying to double down on how do we make sure that that pipeline, even though it maybe froze up for a few months, how do we make sure we get every ounce out of it once it comes back? But I would tell you, like, morale, huge. Mental health of people that are on this journey with you, no matter if you're a solo founder, got a team of 2 or 3, or you're now budding and it's you're at 5, 6, 10 people. Like, please take care of the people that are around you. Like, this is hard enough. I got the LBs to prove it. Yeah, so I would say like it's really about making sure everybody's getting taken care of in the best way that you can.
Beautiful. What would you like to see from us as we build our products? And what's kind of like some parting words of wisdom?
I would,
battle cry.
Yeah, battle cry. I talked about interviews and like getting close to your customer. Find ways that with those customers that you become close with, they become probably your biggest champion. Make sure you're sharing those incremental changes with them in advance. I can't tell you how much that will de-risk your thoughts. Like, it's one thing to go from a field meeting, using it with them, to storyboards, whatever the process is you're doing all that thinking. But if you can then turn it right back around when it's ready and say, hey, this is what we had, and like you have like a working prototype or whatever it might be, right, whatever you're building, do that. And do it all the time. Because not only will they continue to be your champion, but again, I can't stress enough, you gotta de-risk what you're building. Because your cost to build is heavy, even in the Midwest where it's a little bit maybe nicer. But the reality is it's all about opportunity cost and all that stuff, right? So it's just expensive to build, so make sure you're building the right thing. And talk to people. Like, if you don't have a product person, do what Rob did. Ask for a little bit of help. Like, you're not gonna get people for hours, but you might be able to get them for 15 minutes, right? Go get a coffee, go have a sandwich, something like that.
Well put. A wise man once told me, everyone needs help, but really the skill set is like knowing when and how to ask and reach out and actually get the help that you need. Like, but everyone needs help, like basically all the time.
Yeah.
So,
if anybody knows any civil engineers, I want to talk to them tomorrow. There you go.
okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.